see you.
You good? Working from home?
Yep.
How you like that?
Sometimes.
All right, you ready? Good to see you. All right. Well, thank y'all for coming. And again, I'm at an angle from y'all because that's where our camera is set up in here. I have a lot of information to give you today. Of course, I'm Paul Lilly. I'm the county judge for Brown County. So rather than send this out in emails and answer all the different questions that are inevitable to come back, I'll cover each topic one at a time, and then I'll take questions at the end. Does that sound okay to everyone? And we are live on our YouTube channel also, so that people can watch from elsewhere. So the three topics that I want to talk to you about today are the America Rescue Plan Act and what I'm going to propose to the commissioners that we do with that money. And second, I want to talk to you about the North Lake Brownwood Volunteer Fire Department. And we have our Chief of Emergency Management in the back. He can answer questions as well. And then lastly, Steve and whoever hadn't had a chance, I'll answer any direct questions you have about the complaint that's been lodged against me that is now on appeal to the Texas Supreme Court. So I'll be happy to answer. That way we can just knock it all out at once, all right? Okay. Well, first is let's get with the thing, the meat on the bone, so to speak. The America Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Bob, what would you say about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, we called all the utility districts, meaning the White Zephyr, Brooksmith, May, and Brownwood Water Improvement District. We called everybody together at my office and we had a meeting and we discussed what their priorities were for the grant money we were given. Now, let me stop right there and say, here's the money that we were getting. But before I even talk about what total, actually, we were given $7.3 million, $7,354,638, which you have those numbers on the sheet that I handed out to you. I was against every penny, to be honest, because it's going to come out of our pockets, everybody, and it was a tax. They say that it's not going to affect the tax rate, but sure it is. But here's what myself and the commissioners were faced with. We could refuse the money and not accept it, and they're just going to take it, our share, and they're going to divvy it up to other counties in Texas. So if it was use it or lose it, then certainly we accepted the money and we'll use it to make the lives better of our residents in the county. And that is wholly and completely what we want to use this money for. And anything that I'll talk to you about here in a minute, the proposal, all of this, and please make special note of what I'm telling you, all of this is subject to the approval of the Commissioners Court. This is just my recommendation as to what to do with this money. We're restricted significantly on what we can do with the American Rescue Plan Act money. Unlike the COVID money, this is designed to help us recover from COVID as well. But if you recall last year, we got how much, Bob? 700,000. We could use that almost any way we wanted as long as it was tied to COVID. That's not the case with this money. But everything that I'm going to talk to you about today, we vetted with the Treasury Department, and they said that it is permissible to use for what we're talking about. So I suspect the commissioners will probably be on board as well, because I've visited with most of them privately, and this is what they want to see the money used for. We want to make sure it goes back to the citizens of Brownwood in the best way that we can in the avenues that we're permitted to use this money. I know that sounds convoluted, but we're talking about the federal government, so it is. Again, myself and everybody on the court are very conservative. We do not like any increase in taxes, but it was either use this money or they're going to take it and give it to someone else. So we're going to use it to try to make the lives better of our Brown County residents. So I asked each of the the water districts, to tell me what they needed, and that includes Brooksmith, Zephyr, and May, and the Brownwood Water Improvement District. Now, first I'm going to talk about Brooksmith. They've asked for $317,499 is what they're proposing. And that also, if you can't write that fast, it's on the handout that I gave you. What they're going to do with that in Brooksmith is they want to install as large as they can get, a generator that will power their, Bob, lift stations. Anyway, the bottom line is a generator for their water supply. Same thing with Zephyr. They asked for $255,011. Now, what those two want to do is to make sure that they never get caught like we did this past year where the water can't be pumped to our residents. If they can get water from Brownwood Water Improvement District to Brooksmith and Zephyr, this generator, should they lose power like we did before, even though they call it a once in a 100-year storm, we got caught unprepared. I'll be honest, nobody in the 254 counties in Texas, we weren't prepared like we should have been. We just never imagined 2-degree temperature in Brown County, Texas. So this way, they will be able to pump and keep that water flowing. It won't sit still and freeze. It isn't as likely to sit still and freeze, and we can get the water to the residents, unlike the disaster that we had this past spring where that was not possible. Or was that in the fall? I've already lost track of it. February, that's what I thought. May is the other water district. May has just got their own generator. Bob, how much was that grant for?
It's a $20,000 grant for a backup generator.
So $20,000 for their small system for a backup generator. That's installed and up and running. So they'll have power. Power goes out. But what May needs is a complete infrastructure overhaul. I'm told with their water lines and their valves. So they've asked for $350,284. And that's, as I understand it, digging up lines and laying new lines and all. So May will be in excellent shape after this. The one that you don't see on my list here is the Brownwood Water Improvement District. This is the big one. They've asked for 2.2 million or so, 2.7 million. I'm sorry, $2.7 million, primarily for a generator that could handle the workload that they incur. Now remember, we all buy our water from them. So if they can't get water to Zephyr and Brooksmith and May, then May and Zephyr and Brooksmith, all the improvements they've done doesn't matter at all because they're not getting water. But the difference between the Brownwood Water Improvement District is the county alone is not going to fund the 2.2 or $2.7 million. I don't know why I have 2.2 stuck in my head. 2.7 million. Everybody's going to have buy-in on that. And I'm talking about the county, the city of Brownwood, the city of Bangs, and the city of Early. We're all going to have to pitch in and help on that 2.7 million. Now, the city also received a large sum under the America Rescue Plan as well. The city of Brownwood, I'm saying. Each city actually did, or will have, if they don't have it already. So we're going to all come together at some point in the future and divvy that up proportionally by population, and residents served. And the county, our portion will cover May and Brooksmith and Zephyr, and everybody else who lives outside of incorporated city limits. Now we'll offer up our share of the funds for that generator that they're asking for. I'm in favor of it because if they can't get water to all the other water districts, what's the point? So I think that's a fantastic idea. I was a little taken aback, as most of you are, by the price tag of 2.2 or 2.7 million for one generator. But I'm also not an expert in that area. You know, a good leader surrounds himself with people who are experts in the field, and he listens to what they recommend. Well, I didn't surround myself with these gentlemen. They're all hired by each water district, but they're experts. So when they tell me something, I believe them, and I'm going to go on their word. So that totals. If you haven't been counting the numbers, that so far we've talked about $922,794. $922,794. Now that does not include our portion of that 2.7 million for Brownwood Water Improvement because we don't know what our portion is going to be just yet. But we're going to be able to fund it out of this. I'm going to keep money set aside so it doesn't directly come out of our local taxpayers' pockets. Now again. It's a grant from the federal government, so someplace, somewhere, they're going to recover the money, or maybe they're printing new money. I don't know, but there'll be no tax increase at the county level for any of these expenses that I'm talking about. Let me repeat that: there'll be no tax increase at the county level for any of these improvements that I'm talking about. Now, in addition to water supply, there are a few other infrastructure expenditures that are authorized out of this America Rescue Plan Act money. each of the school districts, well, except for Brownwood, which I imagine will be appealing to the city of Brownwood and the funding that they receive, because I haven't received anything from Brownwood ISD. But I do have a request from Banks, Brooksmith, and Early, and we're estimating each of them, we'd like to give each of them $250,000. Now, I know that Banks would like, and Early, both, would like to use it on fiber optics improvements so that they can, their campuses can talk to one another, can communicate and upgrade. They can't do that right now, apparently. And that is an expenditure that is permitted under this Rescue Act. Now, Brooksmith is a little different. From what I understand, Brooksmith would like to, their campus is all contained in one location. From what I understand, they would like to install windows in the classrooms that don't have windows so that they can help with better ventilation, which hence would reduce the need for recirculated air and cut down on the spread of COVID. So that is something that Mr. Contreras, Bob Contreras, our Grants and Government Affairs Coordinator, he has checked, and that is a permissible expense. So Brooksmith can use that money for that. For them, that would be, obviously, you can do that math in your head at $250 a piece. That's $750,000 for the schools to help the bottom line is it helps our children be safer from the COVID disease, and it helps them learn better by improving their fiber optics communication. So that gives us a grand total thus far of 1.6 million. I'm sorry. Let me just read it out loud. $1,672,794. Again, that's $1,672,794. Now, so far, we have already been given $3.6 million of the $7.3 million that Brown County is allotted under the Rescue Act. We've already had in hand. They deposited it in our account already. $3.6 million. So we have more than enough. If the commissioners approve what I'm recommending to them, we have more than enough to cover everything that they've asked for. And we'll have enough set aside to cover our portion of the Brownwood Water Improvement District's $2.7 million generator. Again, I don't know exactly what that amount is going to be just yet, but we'll be able to cover it. That will leave us, not including the Brownwood Water Improvement District's portion, that leaves us $5.6 million of that $7.3 million left over. Now, again, a sizable chunk of that 5.6 remaining is going to have to go to the Brownwood Water Improvement District, because I believe the population for the city is just a few hundred more residents than the population for those who live outside of an incorporated city, and those are the ones we're responsible for. Y'all follow me? Okay. So we're going to have a hefty balance left over. Every single day, they are adding to, I would hate to have Bob's job, because every single day he has to go online and somebody submits a question nationwide saying, can we use this money for this? And the Treasury will respond. So every single day he has to log on and see what new uses are now permissible under this act. I kind of believe they passed this Rescue Act in a hurry, and they didn't think it completely through, to be honest, what they wanted the money used for and didn't. Originally, it simply said infrastructure and COVID mitigation. Now, we can use it to increase our law enforcement presence if we need to. We can use it for building, remodeling, or acquisition if we need to. There's a whole host of areas that is now approved. Now, there's one that's not on my list, but this morning in our budget hearings, the district attorney asked for an additional assistant district attorney to help prosecute, help catch up on the backlog of cases when we didn't have court for almost a year. Actually, it's more than a year during COVID. That expenditure can come out of this money as well, although compared to the other expenditures we're talking about here today, that's minimal. It's $100,000 at the most per year. That's salary for an assistant district attorney plus benefits. I think all in that comes to around $75,000, maybe $80,000 all in for an assistant DA. And when I say all in, that's salary, retirement, matching Social Security, health insurance, and the whole 9 yards. Now, each year, he's going to request that be renewed until the backlog of COVID cases are cleared. Now, I encourage you to contact Mr. Murray directly and get quotes from him. I'm not an expert on what he's going to do with his staff. I can just tell you that he did ask for that position to be funded out of the Rescue Plan Act. And the Rescue Plan Act, we do have it in writing, does permit that kind of expenditure. So we've got a green light. We've learned from the federal government that we don't believe anything they tell us on the telephone. We require them to send it to us by email or in writing. Otherwise, we're not doing anything with it other than letting it go in one ear and out the other. Because what they say today, they'll change tomorrow. I'm sorry, but that seems to be the case. Now, our county clerks have also asked for $1.4 million in revenue out of this fund to help digitalize, I guess that's the phrase, the microfiche records that, if you remember back in the 80s and 90s, we transferred everything from paper to microfiche. Well, now that microfiche is going to go bad soon. It's already starting to go bad. So we've got to get that scanned and placed digitally so that it can be accessed online and in the computer. But I'm not including this 1.4 million that they've asked for because I don't think that's, I think we can do that much cheaper. And we're looking into that. But I wanted to let you know that request was also made. But I think we can do that considerably cheaper. And I like the best bang for my buck. It's not my buck, but when I say my buck, I'm talking about the taxpayer's dollar. I like to make sure it stretches as far as we can and that we're getting the best deal that we can. All right, well, that's all I have on the American Rescue Plan Act. Do y'all have any questions for me on that one? Remember, I was an old college professor, so I try to give my presentations to where I answer the questions in advance, the questions that I anticipate. But if I left something out, please ask.
Is it possibly actually 2 generators for the water improvement district? Because one for each water.
I think so, yes. Yes. Oh, I'm talking all in.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not an expert in that area. I leave that up to I let the experts tell me what they need, and it's my job to go out and get them what they need. A good leader facilitates. You tell me what you need to get your job done, and I'll go out and get it. In this particular case, it was handed to us on a silver platter. And again, I don't like that. I don't like being handed money by the federal government like this, but if we don't use it for our residents, they're going to take it away and they're going to give it to somebody else who will use it. So by gosh, under those circumstances, we're going to use it for ours. And again, every single thing I just told you is contingent upon approval of the Commissioner's Court. Please, those of you in the media, please stress that, because this is just my recommendation. It means nothing if a majority of the court does not approve it. Now, what would we do with the remaining leftover money? And I'm just going to throw this out there. This is ideas. And again, some of you have heard my ideology always, especially if you're some of my former college students. I taught this in every class that I had. Always in life and in good leadership and management, try and play chess rather than checkers. If you follow what I mean, don't play a game of reaction. Don't look at tomorrow. Look at 7 tomorrows or 5 to 7 years down the line. Have a vision. And in doing so, if we have enough money left over, we could use it for a variety of things. We can't use it for road and street maintenance. That answer has been no. It cannot be used for that. But what we can use it for example, to build a new wing onto our jail. A wing of our jail costs between $3.2 and $3.5 million. That would give us 50 more beds, 48 to 50 more beds in our jail, and that would reduce us packing. Well, I shouldn't say packing. Putting the maximum number of inmates into one particular cell. And when you spread them out, you reduce the flow of COVID. That's just common sense. So they have said that is permissible uses of this money. Well, the great thing about that is if the commissioners were to decide to expand our jail, we can lease a lot of those beds out to other counties. And in the end, those counties will end up paying for that jail for us if we lease it out long enough. Does that make sense? We charge about $50 per day per inmate, the sheriff does, and you just do the math. That adds up really quick, and that will pay off that expansion of the jail where it didn't cost the taxpayer a dime. As a matter of fact, we would get money back on the deal. So that's just one possible use of the leftover revenues that we have for this. But first and foremost, and I want to state this unequivocally, make sure you're quoting me, our priority is to get this money back to the residents of Brown County. Now, I can't give it back to you in your pockets. I can't give everybody a check, but I can do my very best to make sure that your water doesn't stop flowing in the future because of a lack of electricity or because of antiquated busted pipes, whatever the case may be. Now also, and this is contingent, everybody, and I want to make this very clear. If there is enough money left over, I would like to create a program to where if the water district that you live in already has a line running in the right of way of whatever highway or road you live off of, but you don't have the piping to connect to it, so you're on well water. Does everybody follow what I mean? I would like to create a program where we fund out of the remaining fund of this balance, where we fund up to half of a resident's cost to lay pipe to get them connected, get them off of well water and get them connected to their water district if they want. And what I envision is they would need to fill out an application, get us an approximate cost, and then apply for 50% of that cost out of the Rescue Act, Rescue Plan Act. All of this, again, is contingent upon approval of the commissioners. Now, the last project I just told you about, that will probably come much later this fall or after our second disbursement. Well, I know it will. It would come after our second disbursement of the money. And again, we've already received 3.6 million, and then we'll receive the remaining, the balance of the 7.3 million sometime early in the spring, I guess.
After the first week of May,
This coming, or May next year.
May next year.
Next year, they'll give us the second half. And that's probably where I envision funding these last things that I've talked to you about. And those are just, at this point, ideas. Guys, does that make sense? Just brainstorming ideas. I'm not recommending those right now to the Commissioners Court. All I'm recommending right now is the Brooksmith, Zephyr, and May Water Improvement District requests, the Baines, Brooksmith, and Early School Districts requests, and whatever our portion of the cost for the generators for the Groundwood Water Improvement District. That's going to be my official first recommendation, along with Mr. Murray's recommendation for an assistant district attorney being funded out of that. That's going to be, and I'll probably recommend that as early as this coming Monday. So once again, I gave you a little bit more information. Do you have any questions on that? I should have brought something to drink. All right, so if you have no questions on that, the next thing I want to talk to you about, I also gave you a handout, is the Lake Brownwood, North Lake Brownwood Volunteer Fire. I got all these acronyms in my head. The North Lake Brownwood Volunteer Fire Department, as you know, as you probably all heard, word of mouth spreads quickly in Brown County. There have been lots of turmoil in that department for quite some time. We sat back, and I say we, the county, we sat back and gave them the time they needed to get it straightened out, and it never came to a resolution. And it got to the point where my chief of emergency management, our emergency management coordinator, Daryl Johnston, and myself, and several of the commissioners who I visited with privately, we did not feel that we needed to encourage them to get their business in order up there. And I'm glad to report, I'm about to report that they did with great success. Here's the situation. We have about $70,000 new radios that are ready to be distributed to them. We didn't feel comfortable doing that because one day they had a fire chief and the next week they didn't, and there was just so much turmoil. So I called a community meeting. As you recall, because of this last year's pandemic, when you become a county judge, there are 254 of us in the state of Texas. Some of the smallest print that you never think to read, it says at the very bottom of all the other duties that you have, it says, oh yes, and you're the statutory director of emergency management for your county. Now, how often does that ever come into play outside of a natural disaster? Well, we saw it this year with COVID. So by state statute, each county judge is the director of emergency management. So ultimately, emergency management for the entire county rests upon the county judge. Now, I take a hands-off approach. Each fire department manages itself. We got our ambulance service is doing a fantastic job now. So it really doesn't take up too much of my time. Now, COVID took up a great deal of my time, as you know, but finally we're in the end stages of that, fingers crossed. And but under my duties as director of emergency management, I stopped at the recommendation of Daryl Johnston, our chief of emergency management, our coordinator, I stopped the issuance of the radios. And also we weren't going to issue them any more county funds. I think they'll do, unless it changes, it's about $8,500. But that's subject to change because that's next year's budget. They've already gotten this year. But we weren't going to release that money until we knew where it was going and what it was being used for and who was in charge up there, to be honest. So we called a community meeting on Saturday. I was sorry I didn't see any of the media there, but I'm briefing you on it now. It was at the, what building did we use?
American Legion.
The American Legion. And of course, we're talking about mainly Thunder Bay, Harbor Point, Tamarack Mountain, and Oak Point subdivisions. That's who the North Lake Brownwood Volunteer Fire Department primarily serves. We had a standing room only. I'd say about 100, 125 people in there. We couldn't pack anybody else in there if we tried. Basically, they had three options. For one, they could stick with the organization that they had. They could hit the reset button and start all over, or they could completely just disband and we would sell the equipment off and divide up the money however we could do so under law. And we would allow there would be no more North Lake Brownwood Volunteer Fire Department district. We would divvy that up to other districts. They elected to go with option number 2. They hit the reset button. And how we did that was we invited everybody, all the stakeholders came together. And only those who own property in the North Lake Brownwood Volunteer Fire Department response area or live there. And they don't have to own the property. If they live there, they still got to vote. And it was almost everybody in the room. There was just a handful of people that were there just to watch. They all voted overwhelmingly. Completely overwhelmingly. I think there were only 6 or so votes to keep the current system. They wanted to hit the reset button. So they did. So we recreated the North Lake Brownwood Volunteer Fire Department's organization. Everybody there, all the stakeholders elected Brian Taylor. He's a resident up there. He is the new president that will serve over the North Lake Brownwood Volunteer Fire Department board. Serving also on the board will be Paula Turner. She was elected secretary and treasurer. And I gave this to you in a handout, so you don't have to scribble this down real fast if you don't want. Carl Baxley was elected the fire chief. Carl is a retired, I believe, paid fireman from Hobbs, New Mexico. So he is the new fire chief. Scott Pierce, who was the fire chief, was under the old system, was elected assistant fire chief. And Keith Past, am I pronouncing that correctly, was elected captain. So they have their organizational structure. They also elected to adopt a whole new set of bylaws that were recommended, or that are commonly used in is it the Forestry Service?
Yes, sir. Fire departments in Texas.
Fire department case. And anyway, it calls for a whole new set of operating orders, and they can amend that, I guess we can call it a charter for lack of other words. They can amend it however they need to fit them, because it's a generic one, but it's a generic one that is got the seal of approval on it. It's used by a lot of volunteer fire departments. So they will, that board that was just elected can now amend that and make it, customize it directly to the North Lake Brownwood Fire Department. We want to give a special thanks to the previous board for all their volunteer work. It's tedious. You don't get paid for it. I know a lot about being a volunteer. It's very rewarding, but it can also be very stressful when you have a lot of people depending on you. So we want to thank them, and we want to thank everybody that came and attended that meeting. It was like I said, standing room only. So you have that handout as well. Do you have any questions for me on the North Lake Brownwood Volunteer Fire Department? None? All right. The last topic that I wanted to cover with you is, if you heard, several of you reported recently that I received an order by the state's Commission on Judicial Conduct to complete some additional training. And I want to report to you that training was completed before they ever even asked for it. It was already done. I did that this past spring before, not even aware that they were going to tell me they wanted that. I did it anyway. What this all springs from, and I'm going to be candid, and I'm going to answer your questions about this. We have a resident named Joe Cooksey, and I'm going to say his name out loud because he is the complainant. He filed a complaint against me, even though he wasn't a member or a party to anything of his complaint. But his complaint was in 2 parts. His complaint to the state was that I was still serving as a reserve police officer, a reserve deputy sheriff, while I was sitting as a judge. Yes, I was. I served and still serve as a reserve policeman in a jurisdiction where I have no judicial authority whatsoever. The 2 paths would never cross. Does that y'all follow me? And I help out 2 departments that desperately need it. My adopted hometown, of course, is Brownwood, but my actual hometown is Granbury. I'm a reserve deputy sheriff back in Hood County. And I also help out San Saba, 45 minutes south of here, one of the poorest counties in the state. They got like 6 full-time deputies for 24-hour coverage, 7 days a week. So I help them out as well. Mainly what I help out with is training, but I help out in other areas as well. Well, Mr. Cooksey didn't like that. So he filed a complaint. And here's essentially, this is the first part of the 2-part complaint. Essentially, the commission came back and said, well, while both are noble professions, we don't want them to enter. Here's what they implied. They implied that I could not be impartial when sitting on the bench when hearing criminal matters because I was an active reserve police officer elsewhere. That is absolutely, unquestionably absurd. I cannot believe they did that. As a matter of fact, let me go you one further. The Texas Association of Counties, who represents all 254 counties, they couldn't believe that the commission issued that order either. So the Texas Association of Counties has now provided me free of charge with a legal defense team, and they want to appeal this, and we have now appealed this to the Texas Supreme Court. Because, you need to stop for a minute? Because here's the issue. Would it make any difference if I retired as a volunteer police? I don't take a dime to be that police officer elsewhere. I put on that uniform and all the risk that comes with it to help out and serve and give back. Would it make a difference if I retired? So I'm a retired police chief now sitting on the bench. Are you going to tell me because I'm a retired police chief, because I spent 30 years in that noble profession, I can't be impartial? That's what they've implied. Let me do you one further. Per the Texas Association of Counties attorney, does that mean all of the prosecutors who are now been elected judge can't be impartial? Is that what they're implying? That's exactly what they're implying by issuing that ruling. They're saying that if you served in any of these other professions, you're not qualified to sit on the bench because we can't trust you to be impartial. Now that's with no evidence that we haven't been impartial, mind you. And I'll tell you this, at last count, there were between 30 and 40 other judges across the state of Texas who still serve as volunteer police. That's going to affect all of them. So TAC has taken up this cause, and we want to go to the Texas Supreme Court and get a final determination. We may win, we may lose, but we're going to try. We're gonna fight the good fight. And to give you an analogy, let's say you applied for a license to carry permit for a handgun, and because you were in the military for 30 years, they come back and tell you, no, you can't have that license to carry that gun because you were in the military. We can't trust you to be impartial and to use due course of action in the event of deadly force. We can't trust you to do that because you spent 30 years wearing a uniform. Ladies and gentlemen, it's absurd. And I'm glad to say TAC agrees with me, and hopefully the Supreme Court will as well. Now, there's a second part to his complaint, was that we had a gentleman who was in jail on multiple charges, and he was in a county, I believe Reynolds County, and I'm not even sure where Reynolds County is. It's quite a distance from here. And he was in jail there on no bond. He couldn't get out. Excuse me. And he had already been charged in our county as well, so I didn't set a bond for him. There was no need. He couldn't get out where he was at. If he was going to get out of Reynolds County Jail, they were going to call us and say, hey, we're about to release him. Do you want to put a bond on him, or do you want to come get him? Does that make sense to everybody? However, that gentleman wrote me a letter last year, or year before. It was my first year in office. He wrote me a letter, 2019, that said he wanted to come to Brown County and plead guilty. He did not have an attorney. He hadn't requested one, he had no court-appointed attorney, and he had not hired one. So he was his own attorney, in a sense. He was not represented by anyone. For 2 weeks, I tried to contact our county attorney's office, and at that time, I know the man's very busy. Our county attorney didn't return my calls. It was just a one-man office at the time. Now he has an assistant, which makes things much better. But at that time, he did not have an assistant county attorney. He didn't return my text messages. He didn't return my emails. If I emailed him, to be honest, I can't even remember if I did. I tried to reach him every way that I could because he is the other party to that to the charges on that man. And it would have been his job to contact that man and ask him, all right, are you sure you want to enter this plea? Because it cost us money to send a deputy to Reynolds County and get him and bring him back. Does that make sense? Everybody still with me? Unable to locate the county attorney, and the fact that the gentleman, and I'm not going to mention his name, He didn't have an attorney himself. He was representing himself. There was no one else for me to call. I wasn't going to let that man sit in jail 1 day longer than he had to be. Now, I like to believe that I'm a firm but fair judge. But one of the reasons I ran for judge was just that, to be fair and impartial. And that includes someone who is maybe guilty as day, which he was, and he admitted. But still, even he doesn't need to sit in jail 1 day longer than he has to. So I picked up the phone, and on a recorded line, I called the jail desk at the Runnels County Jail, and it was a recorded line, as I understand it, and asked him, before I bring you back, do you still want to enter this plea of guilty? He said yes. And I said, you're not represented by counsel, are you sure? He said yes. So I sent a deputy to go get him. We brought him back. Without a glitch, he entered a plea of guilty, and he got time served for his crime here in Brown County, and then we were done. Mr. Cooksey made a complaint that I made that phone call directly to that inmate, and I should not have done that. Granted, if he'd had an attorney, I would have called the attorney, or if I could have gotten a hold of the county attorney for Brown County, and again, no fault of his. He was very busy. It was a one-man job, so I know how busy he stayed. But I couldn't get anybody on the phone. There was nobody for me to get any help from. So it left it up. I wasn't going to let that man sit in jail 1 day longer than he absolutely had to. So I called him and made sure that's what he wanted to do. And we got the Brown County charges taken care of. And so that's the two-part complaint that Mr. Cooksey filed against me. I'm sure there's going to be questions about this. So maybe I ought to stop right now, and I've given you all the information that's out there. We have already filed the appeal to the Texas Supreme Court. So we will be getting a court date hopefully this fall, if not next spring, and hopefully we can set precedent. I pray they'll agree with me, but they may not. But I see no reason why I can't continue to serve the citizens of Texas as a policeman. Again, doing it without collecting 1 cent. I don't get paid. I have to buy my own equipment and uniforms. I've been proudly serving that profession for 30 years. Everyone in Brown County who voted for me knew that. But the kind of judge I signed up to be was a fair and impartial judge who doesn't leave anybody in jail or make anybody go to jail if it isn't absolutely necessary. So I kept my word, and that's the kind of judge I'm going to continue to be, or try to be, aspire to be. But surely there's some questions on this topic. So I'll take those down.
So related to the reserve deputy part,
Right.
what is it that the Commission on Judicial Conduct wants you to do?
They said I could not be an active reserve deputy and be a judge at the same time.
Okay.
They did not specify whether I hear criminal cases or just civil cases, because a while back I stopped hearing criminal cases. A defendant doesn't even come before me. All I hear is civil cases, so the two could never overlap. But they said that because I was a policeman, I couldn't be trusted to be fair and impartial as a judge. That's essentially what they said.
So you are appealing that or the other part related to
Both.
this? Okay.
Both. We're appealing both to the Supreme Court, and it's all in one motion. But the complaint that Mr. Cooksey filed was in 2 parts, and those were the 2 parts.
Okay.
Narrowing it down. I'll be honest with you, the complaint he filed was 2 or 3 pages long, and they dismissed everything except those 2 issues. All the rest of it, they did away with.
So what are you seeking in relation to the defendant, the deal for Runnels County? What are you actually seeking?
Well, they ordered me to complete additional training, which I already did, by the way, as I mentioned before they ever even ordered it. They didn't have much of an issue with that, but still, under those circumstances, I would like to set a precedent where no judge in Texas leaves somebody sitting in jail simply because he can't afford to have an attorney to speak for him. That's absurd.
So what is it that you're asking the Supreme Court to?
To just overturn that. To do away with, to overturn both of the 2 complaints that the Commission on Conduct considered. He gave a whole list of complaints that they didn't give any consideration to. Those 2 they did. I'm asking that they, even though I didn't mind doing the extra training, like I said, I did it again. I'm repeating myself, but I did it long before they ever asked for it. And each year, a judge has to have a minimum number of training hours. I went well above and beyond that minimum because I like training. I'm a former college professor. Well, I still teach. So I'm a college professor. I like to have all the education I can get, but I don't think that that should have been a sanction. which they issued a public sanction saying that I should not have called that inmate. Well, what was my alternative? To leave him sitting in jail? It's absurd. You know, where's the best interest being served there? To let somebody, he cost us money, $50 a day, every day he sits in the Reynolds County Jail. The taxpayers here had to pay for it if they were housing him for us. I don't know if they were, which they probably weren't because he was in there on Reynolds County charges as well. So let me correct that. But he still shouldn't have sat in jail one day longer for a Brown County charge than I could have effected. Did I clear that up? Yeah, actually, we weren't paying Reynolds County the housing. Let me clarify that.
So you're a reserve deputy for Cook County now,
I am, and for San Saba County,
for their sheriff's office.
for their sheriff's office. And I have been for years, have been for a long, long time. And I help out San Saba. They've got a new sheriff. They needed help. I know him. And I said, certainly. Now, mostly what I've done for them is training, the deputies so that they don't have to pay to send them out, because it's a very poor county. We all know where San Saba is at. The county seat's about 45 minutes from here. Any other questions? Did I answer that? I'm sorry. The other two, yes,
I got a couple. So
sir.
Mr. Cootsey's complaining that you're volunteering your time, spending money out of your pocket to go drive to San Saba to buy the uniform, supply your weapon and stuff, helping the community. He's complaining.
Yes, and the question, wasn't a question, well, I guess here's a question, but he asked, if you can't hear him, am I volunteering my time, providing my own equipment? And I'll be honest, we all know the dangers of law enforcement. So far this year, we've lost more law enforcement officers in the line of duty than I ever remember at this point in the year. Yes, I do all of it for free.
Another question, the state policy is not a rule, it's a policy. They said you should not be.
They don't have a policy. They issued a letter in 2000, just a simple letter, that they recommended that judges not also volunteer as a policeman. It was not an order. It was not, you'll find it nowhere in the local government code. It's nowhere in state law. They issued an advisory bulletin back in 2000 or 2001, 20 years ago. They just said, well, we don't recommend it. They didn't say you couldn't. What I'm saying is, you pass a statute that tells me I can't do that, an adopted law signed by the governor, and of course, we'll all stop. All the judges in the state who are volunteering will stop. But we're not there. That doesn't exist. So where they came up with this, I know it's rooted in something. I read their opinion, but we take exception with it, and so does TAC, Texas Association of Counties, and we're going to try and get it overturned, and we're going to try and get a set policy in writing from now on, so that there's nothing ever in question. Does that make sense? Right.
So the commission has not directly told you can't do this.
They have.
They have.
Yeah, they told me that I can't do both, so we've appealed. So their decision is stayed, pending the appeal. So yes, they told me that I can't cry, and their reasoning again behind it, and I'm gonna get passionate here, is they accused me of not being able to be impartial. Because I wore that uniform for 30 years, them and Mr. Cooksey are asserting that I can't be an impartial judge on the bench. It's absolutely absurd. And again, what about all the former police officers who served? I couldn't begin to tell you how many of our justices of the peace statewide are former police officers, including ones in this building. Now, they may not still be active, but that's not my point. The point is what the commission asserted, and it's an appointed commission, they're not elected. They're appointed by the governor. And what they asserted is because you served in one field, the two can't overlap because you can't be impartial. What about, it's saying, if I retire, they're gonna come back and say, well, you're a retired police chief, so we can't trust you, you can't hold your job because you're retired. So they're telling all the retired policemen, police chiefs, and prosecutors across the state that they can't be judges, that they're ineligible. In essence, that's what they're saying. And so we're gonna let the Supreme Court decide.
Is that in a written document somewhere?
Yeah, Mr. Cooksey posted it all online.
So I only see the part that refers to the guy from Reynolds County.
Well, the other part, it was a private letter that they sent to me. It's not subject to freedom of information. And I understand why they did that, because they don't really have anything to base it on. So it was what they call a private reprimand or a private advisory. It's not a reprimand, but advisory. But even though it's private, I don't care. I want established law here to rule. I want the rule of law to govern in the day. And nobody's going to tell me that I can't be an impartial judge, especially because I served my public for 30 years prior in a different profession. It's ridiculous. I don't know what more I can say.
I have one more question. This Mr. Cooch, is it the same guy that came to your office after election and said if you didn't do things his way, he was gonna bury you on his
Yeah,
page?
Exactly.
The same guy that has all the profanity on his webpage?
I'm going to reserve my personal opinions for the man who filed this complaint. Out of respect for him, he has a First Amendment right. He runs a very, well, I don't want to say it's popular because it's not, social media page, but he was a big supporter of mine. I didn't know him very well when I ran for office. Well, after I took office, he began to tell me what I could and couldn't do on a regular basis. And finally, he and we had a discussion, and although albeit verbal, I said, your opinion, I don't remember the exact conversation, but the essence of it was your opinions are always welcome, but please don't come in here dictating to me or my staff what we can and cannot do. And since then, he's had a vendetta against me ever since. He files every possible complaint that he can. I couldn't begin to tell you, ladies, I'm going to be honest with you. If I were to bring you some of the profanity-laced electronic email that man has sent demanding documents, it would make a sailor blush. It's that bad.
Well, do you have any idea how he has the private letter or private representative?
I don't think he has a copy of that. If he did, he got it illegally. But I'm telling you what they told me in the private letter, because we're appealing it. And that should become public now since we've appealed it, so you should be able to get a copy of it, but they have to process it. And I have nothing to hide. I'm proud of what I did, very proud. And I'd do it again, unless they pass a state law to tell me that I can't. Let me just put it this way. I don't like keyboard bullies. We all know what they are, and I do not run from bullies. So, and they don't frighten me either. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Make of that what you will. I believe in everyone's First Amendment right, and he has the right to say, even though, I'll be honest, and I don't want anybody going to his page as a result of this media conference because he'll just feed off of that. But his page is not restricted. And if you ever look at it, it's full of profanity. He uses some of the most horrible language, and any child could log on and read it. It's not protected by anything. But that's his First Amendment right to do so, and it is. And I defend that. I defend his First Amendment right. But I wish he would use a little bit more tact. But I'm using his name, I'm putting it out there because he is the man who filed this complaint, and therefore it's a matter of public record. And if you want to file a Freedom of Information request for all those profanity-laced emails, you can do so. We have our own special digital file that is for nothing but Joe Cooksey, because he sends that many in. And we keep every shred of evidence that man sends us. And you would blush at some of the wording and some of the names he calls me and my staff. But I don't want to make that public unless you demand it, because nobody should read that kind of stuff. Any other questions, madam? I'm sorry the air conditioner just kicked off right as I finished. Could y'all hear me okay? I don't have the microphones turned on. I didn't even think about doing that.
I got one more comment and question. We have our own page up called Beware the Brownwood Watchdog page, and we repost the stuff he does. Because when he posts something, we catch him in a lie, he takes our part off and blocks you from being able to comment on his page and keeps the lie going. Coochie is the 1%er, what we call in the Army, that when you do something wrong, you be man enough to say, hey, I made a mistake. For example, you had commented one time in Commissioner Court that you're basically the CEO of the county, and he had a big blast about how you were a liar, retarded, incompetent. And then him and I got into it. I stood next to him during the campaign. He gave me his cell number. That's how I talked to him, sending private messages instead of going on his webpage. Because most of us that follow his page, we just get on and see what stupid comment he's making. Well, within 5 minutes of him posting his Texas law, my wife found it where it specifically said most county judges are considered the CEO of the county. So I sent that to him privately. So what he did is he just takes my whole post off because he doesn't want to admit he's wrong. He's not 1% of the keyboard bully, what we call warriors, that never admit when they're wrong.
They're probably going to want your name if they're going to use it.
George Huseman. We have our own website to counter his. Is he not the same one that got warned not to come to the courthouse when he's under the influence of alcohol?
I can't speak to that.
Okay.
He is not allowed in my offices of the county. He is prohibited for my staff's safety. He's not allowed to come in the county judge's office. He has an an active criminal trespass warning against him for that. Not for the courthouse, just for my offices. If he needs to communicate with us, he can call my phone, and we'll take care of him. We don't answer his electronic mail anymore because of all the profanity that he uses. He's blocked. We don't even get his emails.
Well, we put up a counter because he had posted that you blocked him from the courthouse, and we reposted the article.
Let me make this very clear to you in the media. I am not attacking Mr. Cooksey, but because he is the complainant on this, and it is going to the Texas Supreme Court, his name is now public record. So you asked me to comment on his complaint and his activities. I can now do that, but I can only state what is factual. I wouldn't dare even presume. And I want to state again for the record, and I hope that y'all print this. He has a First Amendment right, and I'll protect his just the same as I will anybody else's. And even though I don't like what he says, 99.9% of the time, he has a right to say it. But what I don't hope is, as a result of today, that he gets a flood of visitors to his page, because I think that would be a tragedy. I encourage you to avoid it at all costs. But we'll see where the complaint goes. You know what? If I lose, I'll wear my big boy pants and I'll retire as a volunteer police officer, at least until I'm finished being the county judge of Brown County. And I know one of the next questions are, am I running for re-election? I haven't decided yet. I'm still undecided. As you know, I've heard from Congressman Pfluger, his office, and Senator Ted Cruz, his office. It's likely that the March primaries will be pushed back to May at the earliest. Could even be July, but they're shooting for May, and that's a result, of course, of the 10-year census redistricting. They're not going to have the districts drawn, and they don't anticipate having them drawn in time. So our March primary probably will not be in March. Most likely it'll be the next general election day, which is in May, I believe. Now, going back to the fire department issue, Daryl, I forgot to ask if you had anything you want to say. Come on up if you want, anything you want to say or comment, so people on camera can see you.
Thank you, Judge. We're real pleased with the turnout out there, the community involvement. It says a lot for what they think about their community and their fire department. So they're all on board for improving, and we look for good things out there.
And I have given Daryl the order to go ahead and give them their $70,000 worth of new radios, and they will now again be getting the county supplement to help with fuel and maintenance on their trucks. Thank you, Daryl.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions for Chief Johnston? He works with them daily. I don't. I'm not out in the field with them like he is daily. But so now they're up and running, they're reorganized, and they're good to go. And we're quite proud of them. I couldn't be more proud of all the people that turned out. And it was very orderly. It was hot, very hot in that room because it was packed, but we got it done. Got it done in about 2 hours.
Yes, sir.
So, and again, I gave you a handout. Carl Baxley is the new fire chief. You probably don't know him. He hasn't lived here that long. I encourage you to reach out to him. He's the new North Lake Brownwood Volunteer Fire Department chief. And also a new into the board, or to the governing board. I don't, we don't call it a board, but to the fire department is Paula Turner, the new secretary treasurer. I encourage you to reach out to her as well for any quotes or comments. We're glad to have them on board. And again, all these people volunteer. Just like I said, I know a little bit about the power of a volunteer's heart. There's nothing greater, nothing more rewarding either. Gosh, that was a lot of information. Do you have any questions for me on anything that you might think of now? And well, you know how to reach me if you think of something afterwards. All right, thank y'all.